A real estate crash 10 times bigger than 2008 is coming, and nobody's seeing it. The commercial real estate bomb has already been detonated. It's just waiting to explode. I'm Megyn Kelly. For 2 decades, I've covered financial crises that devastate lives and reshape economies. But what I'm about to reveal isn't just another real estate bubble. It's the systematic destruction of American urban centers. The data I've analyzed shows we're facing the largest commercial real estate collapse in American history. And unlike 2008, this one is irreversible. Remote work didn't just change where people work. It destroyed the economic foundation of every major American city. And most people have no idea what's coming next. You think commercial real estate will recover when the economy improves. You think office workers will return to downtown offices. You think city centers will bounce back like they always have. The reality is that urban America, as we know it, is finished permanently. Let me be clear about my sources on this devastating story. During my Fox News tenure, I covered the 2008 housing crisis extensively. I interviewed real estate developers, banking executives, and Federal Reserve officials who watched the residential market implode. But this crisis is different. This isn't about subprime mortgages or housing speculation. This is about fundamental changes in how Americans work and live. I remember interviewing Blackstone CEO Stephen Schwarzman in 2020, just as the pandemic lockdowns began. Off camera, he said something that stuck with me. "This will change commercial real estate forever, Megyn. Not for a year, forever." I thought he was being overly dramatic. I now realize he was being prophetic. When I moved to NBC, I had access to Treasury Department data about commercial real estate trends. Federal regulators have been tracking the collapse in real time. Their internal assessments are terrifying. They're not preparing for a market downturn. They're preparing for a complete restructuring of the American economy. Now that I'm independent at MK Media, I can reveal what those classified reports actually show. The commercial real estate sector is entering terminal decline, and the ripple effects will destroy entire cities. The numbers tell a story that politicians and media don't want to acknowledge. American office buildings are currently 47% occupied. That's down from 95% occupancy in 2019. But here's the crucial point. This isn't temporary. Remote work and hybrid work are permanent changes to the American economy. Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, the largest employers in America have all announced permanent remote work policies. Their employees aren't coming back to downtown offices. Goldman Sachs conducted a survey of Fortune 500 companies in late 2024. 73% said they would maintain significant remote work policies indefinitely. McKinsey estimates that 35% of American jobs can be performed entirely remotely. Another 25% can be performed with minimal office presence. This means that 60% of American workers may never return to traditional office environments. Think about what that means for commercial real estate. Manhattan office buildings that were worth $50 billion in 2019 are now worth $15 billion. That's a 70% decline in asset values. But it's not just New York. Downtown San Francisco office occupancy is at 31%. Chicago is at 38%. Washington, D.C. is at 41%. These aren't temporary pandemic effects. These are permanent structural changes. The financial implications are staggering. American commercial real estate is worth approximately $20 trillion. If office buildings lose 50% of their value permanently, that's $10 trillion in wealth destruction. For comparison, the entire 2008 financial crisis involved roughly $8 trillion in losses. But the commercial real estate crisis is worse than residential housing in 2008 for several reasons. First, commercial mortgages are concentrated in regional and community banks. Unlike residential mortgages, they haven't been securitized and sold to investors. Regional banks hold over $1.3 trillion in commercial real estate loans directly on their balance sheets. Second, commercial real estate loans are typically short-term with balloon payments. Most commercial mortgages require refinancing every 5 to 10 years. Hundreds of billions of dollars in commercial mortgages will need refinancing in 2025 and 2026 at much higher interest rates on properties worth much less than their loan balances. Third, commercial real estate generates income through rent payments. If tenants aren't renewing leases, buildings can't service their debt. Office vacancy rates above 30% make most buildings unprofitable. Vacancy rates above 50% make buildings worthless. We're already seeing the early stages of commercial real estate collapse. In San Francisco, the Salesforce Tower is 70% empty. The building was worth $1.2 billion in 2019. It's currently assessed at $400 million. In Chicago, the Willis Tower is 55% occupied. The owners are negotiating with lenders to avoid default. In Manhattan, hundreds of office buildings are in technical default on their mortgages. Owners are simply walking away rather than continue payments. But the crisis extends far beyond office buildings. Retail real estate is collapsing even faster. Shopping malls, strip centers, downtown retail districts, all are experiencing massive vacancy rates. Amazon and online shopping destroyed traditional retail long before the pandemic. Remote work has accelerated the collapse. When office workers don't commute to downtown areas, they don't shop at downtown stores, they don't eat at downtown restaurants, they don't use downtown services. Entire urban ecosystems are dying. The Magnificent Mile in Chicago has a 40% retail vacancy rate. Union Square in San Francisco is 60% empty. Times Square retail spaces are sitting vacant for months. These were the most valuable retail locations in America. Now they're economically worthless. Restaurant closures in downtown areas are approaching 50% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Not because restaurants can't survive economically, but because their customers aren't there anymore. Hotels in downtown business districts are operating at 30 to 40% capacity. Business travel has declined permanently as companies realize video conferencing can replace most in-person meetings. Convention centers are struggling because corporate events have moved online or to suburban locations with easier parking and access. The entire commercial infrastructure of American cities was built around the assumption that millions of workers would commute to downtown offices 5 days a week. That assumption is now false, and the infrastructure is becoming worthless. But here's where it gets truly catastrophic. The economic model of American cities depends on commercial real estate tax revenue. In New York City, commercial real estate generates 45% of total property tax revenue. In San Francisco, it's 55%. In Chicago, it's 40%. When commercial real estate values collapse, city tax revenues collapse too. New York City is facing a $10 billion budget deficit by 2026 due to declining commercial real estate assessments. San Francisco has already laid off 15% of city employees. Chicago is considering massive service cuts. These cities can't raise residential property taxes enough to compensate. Homeowners are already fleeing to lower tax states. They can't cut spending enough to balance budgets. Police, fire, infrastructure, schools, these services can't be eliminated. So they're borrowing money to finance current operations. Municipal debt is skyrocketing across urban America. But municipal borrowing has limits. When city finances become unsustainable, bond markets stop lending. Detroit in 2013. That's the model for what's coming to American cities. Municipal bankruptcy, service cuts, police and fire reductions, infrastructure collapse. The economic death spiral has already begun. As city services decline, more businesses and residents leave. As the tax base shrinks, services must be cut further. As services decline, more people leave. Eventually, you get urban decay on a massive scale. Buildings abandoned, infrastructure crumbling, crime rising, the hollowing out of American cities. But the crisis isn't limited to urban areas. The banking sector will be devastated too. Regional banks that made commercial real estate loans are facing massive losses. Community development financial institutions that invested in urban development are insolvent. New York Community Bank, which specializes in commercial real estate, has lost 70% of its market value. Republic First Bank failed in 2024 due to commercial real estate losses. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation estimates that 300 to 400 small and medium banks are at risk of failure due to commercial real estate exposure. That's more bank failures than during the entire 2008 crisis. And unlike 2008, the federal government may not bail out these banks. The political appetite for bank bailouts has disappeared. So we're looking at a banking crisis combined with a real estate crisis combined with a municipal finance crisis, all happening simultaneously. The human impact will be enormous. Millions of jobs in commercial real estate, construction, architecture, property management, and related services will disappear permanently. Small businesses that depend on office worker foot traffic will close. Restaurants, dry cleaners, parking lots, convenience stores. Municipal workers will lose jobs as city budgets collapse. Police officers, teachers, firefighters, sanitation workers, construction workers will be unemployed as new commercial development stops entirely. The ripple effects will spread throughout the economy. But here's what makes this crisis different from 2008. In 2008, the solution was to restart lending and encourage people to buy houses again. This crisis can't be solved by restarting commercial real estate development. The demand is permanently gone. Americans aren't going back to traditional office work. Remote work is more efficient, more cost-effective, and more popular with workers. Companies save money on office rent. Employees save time on commuting. Productivity has actually increased with remote work. There's no economic incentive to return to the old model, and there's enormous economic incentive to continue remote work. So the commercial real estate that's collapsing now will stay collapsed permanently. What does this mean for you personally? If you live in a major American city, your property values are about to decline significantly. Not just commercial real estate, but residential too. Cities with collapsing tax bases can't maintain infrastructure. Streets, water systems, schools, public safety, all will deteriorate. If you own commercial real estate investments, either directly or through REITs, you're facing massive losses. If you work in downtown-dependent industries, your job is at risk, not from recession, but from permanent economic restructuring. If you bank with regional or community banks, your deposits may be at risk if those banks have significant commercial real estate exposure. But there are also opportunities in this crisis. Real estate in suburban and rural areas is becoming more valuable as remote workers leave cities. Companies that provide remote work technology and infrastructure are thriving. Businesses that serve remote workers in smaller communities are expanding. The question is whether you'll be positioned to benefit from the changes or become a victim of them. Here's what you can do to protect yourself and potentially profit. First, avoid commercial real estate investments. Office buildings, retail centers, downtown hotels, all are facing permanent decline. Second, consider residential real estate in smaller cities and suburban areas. Remote workers are driving demand in these markets. Third, invest in technology companies that enable remote work. Zoom, Slack, cloud computing providers. These businesses will continue growing. Fourth, look for opportunities in the collapse. Distressed commercial real estate may be converted to residential housing, data centers, or logistics facilities. Fifth, if you work in a location-dependent job, develop remote work skills. The economy is restructuring around distributed work. Sixth, if you live in a city facing fiscal crisis, plan your exit strategy. Municipal services will decline and taxes will increase. The commercial real estate collapse is the biggest economic story that nobody's covering adequately. Mainstream media focuses on office vacancy rates and return to work policies. They're missing the bigger picture. This isn't a temporary adjustment. This is the permanent restructuring of the American economy. The end of the urban-centered economic model that's dominated America since the Industrial Revolution. For 150 years, economic development meant building bigger cities with taller office buildings. People moved from rural areas to urban centers for better jobs and opportunities. That trend has reversed permanently. Technology has made physical proximity unnecessary for most knowledge work. Remote work is more efficient than office work for most jobs. Americans are choosing to live in smaller cities, suburban areas, and rural communities. They can work for companies anywhere while enjoying lower costs and higher quality of life. This is the greatest economic transformation since the shift from agricultural to industrial economy. And like that transformation, it will create winners and losers. Rural and suburban communities will benefit from an influx of educated, high-income remote workers. Urban centers will decline as their economic foundations disappear. Companies that adapt to distributed work models will thrive. Companies that insist on traditional office environments will struggle to attract talent. The changes are happening rapidly. COVID accelerated trends that were already underway, but now the transformation is unstoppable. The economic logic is too compelling. Why pay $100 per square foot for Manhattan office space when your employees can work from home? Why spend 2 hours daily commuting when you can work from anywhere? The old model doesn't make sense anymore, and once people experience the benefits of remote work, they don't want to go back. I've spent my entire career working in New York and Los Angeles, major media markets in major cities. Now I work from my home studio. I reach a global audience without the overhead costs, commuting time, or lifestyle compromises of urban work. This is the future of work for millions of Americans, and it's the death of commercial real estate as we know it. The collapse is happening in slow motion right now, building by building, city by city, bank by bank. But collapse can accelerate quickly when confidence breaks, when investors realize the scale of the losses, when lenders stop refinancing bad loans. We could see a cascade of failures that makes 2008 look manageable by comparison. The warning signs are everywhere. Empty office buildings, bank failures, municipal budget crises, retail closures. But most people aren't connecting the dots. They're not seeing the bigger picture. That's why I'm telling you this story, because understanding what's coming gives you the power to prepare. I'm Megyn Kelly. I've spent my career documenting economic trends that reshape American life. The death of commercial real estate and the hollowing out of American cities is the most important economic story of our lifetime. It's bigger than the 2008 financial crisis. more permanent than the COVID recession, more transformative than the shift from manufacturing to services. This is the end of urban America as the center of economic activity, the rise of distributed work and distributed living. Some will call it progress, the democratization of economic opportunity, the end of expensive, inefficient urban concentration. Others will see it as decline, the decay of great American cities, the loss of urban culture and dynamism. But regardless of how you view it, it's happening. The commercial real estate collapse is irreversible. The only question is whether you'll be prepared for the new economy that emerges from the rubble. The countdown has begun. The old model is dying. The new model is being born. Choose your position carefully, because once the collapse accelerates, there won't be time to adjust. This has been Megyn Kelly. And remember, in a world of managed narratives, independent economic analysis is your most valuable asset. The greatest real estate bubble in history isn't in housing. It's in commercial real estate. And unlike 2008, this bubble can't be reinflated because the underlying demand has permanently disappeared. Welcome to post-urban America. Whether you like it or not, it's your new reality.